welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I'm going to be sharing with you a few, or maybe many, of the things that brought me joy in the last few months. This initially started as me just sharing my favorite books of the quarter, but it's evolved to me sharing all kinds of different categories of things that made me really happy. So we've got all kinds of different entertainment media forms, food, drink, whatever. So there will be timestamps linked, so that way if you want to skip a certain category that you're not interested in, you can. If you're only here for books, you can totally just skip ahead to that section of this video. Let's start with food and drink, actually. So I have a couple of recipes that I want to share with you that are making me so happy. One of them is this breakfast casserole recipe that I found, and I think it's considered like paleo because it doesn't have like a kind of a crust to it, but I've had a really difficult time making breakfast casseroles or quiches without dairy or cheese and having it have like a decent texture. It always seems like it ends up kind of dry and gross, and I thought that I was doing something wrong, or just like quiche is not meant to be made without dairy because I can't have dairy. So I thought that maybe that was just the case, but this recipe is phenomenal. It is so good. I do cheat a little bit. I'll let you know that this recipe, it's filled with all kinds of veggies, and they have you using like butternut squash as a crust. You like slice it like really thin, like these thin rounds, and put it on there. And I don't do that. That is way too much work for me. So instead what I've done is I've chopped up like little pieces of sweet potato or butternut squash and done that, but it's pretty flexible. You can use different types of meats or veggies, but if you're someone like me that struggles with not being able to have dairy, and or you want less carbs, if you don't want a crust on a breakfast casserole, this is a fantastic recipe. The other recipe I want to share with you is an egg roll in a bowl recipe from Pinch of Yum, I think, which is one of my favorite food blogs, and I've made egg roll in a bowl many times. I used to make a vegan one with tempeh, and then I started making it with beef and stuff, but this recipe has a different flavor to it because it has an addition of Chinese 5-spice, which I had never used before, and it's so good. It completely changes like the flavor profile to use that, and I had never cooked with that at all. So highly recommend that. I'll have both of those recipes linked down below, so that way if you are interested in giving either of a try, you can. They're both so quick and easy, and totally like weeknight dinner recipes. I have several new favorite teas. One of them is as a result of my friend Dia, because what she likes to do is when she sends me like books or a card or something, she always includes a couple of tea bags in there, which is just like the coolest thing. And they're always types of teas I hadn't tried before. So like last fall, I think one of my favorites was like Republic of Tea's pumpkin spice, because I hadn't tried it before and she sent it to me and it's phenomenal, so I had to buy my own. This is the same thing that she sent me some of these like a while back, but unfortunately none of my stores in the area had it, and I finally caved and just ordered like a 4-pack of them from Amazon because I love it so much. And that's Yogi's Peach Detox Tea. Now normally I am not huge on like this kind of fruity tea. I kind of prefer ones that are like more spicy in terms of like having spices in them, like cinnamon and stuff like that. So I tend to prefer more like apple cinnamon or pumpkin spice kind of teas as opposed to peach. But even though this has peach in it, it also has like cinnamon and ginger and all kinds of stuff in it. So it's kind of unique in that it doesn't taste like a lot of like fruity herbal teas that I've had before. And it's so good, and I love it so much. And it is like a detox tea as well, which is really cool because it has like dandelion root and stuff like that, which helps with like detoxing your liver and those kinds of things. My other new favorite tea, the box is falling apart big time, but this was in a gift basket that my church gave me when I was recovering from surgery, and I love it so much. It's a lavender chamomile organic tea from Traditional Medicinals, and I'd never had anything by this brand before. I've had chamomile tea before, but I've never had lavender in tea before. I've had like vanilla chamomile or like chamomile and spearmint or things like that, and this has that in it, and it also has lemon balm in it, and it is just like the perfect before bedtime tea. I love it. Oh, it's so good. Also, in case I didn't mention, both of these are like herbal teas, so neither of them have any caffeine in them, which is another thing that is wonderful, so I can drink them any time of the day. One more drink thing. I think I've been sleeping on Bones Coffee Company. Pretty sure that I have. I just recently bought a couple of bags of it for my husband for a Father's Day gift. And oh my gosh, it's so good. We got Highland Grog, which is like a caramel butterscotch flavored coffee. And then the other one we got, I think it's called S'more Time or something like that. And it's s'mores flavored. So I'm not a huge chocolate coffee person. Like, it's one thing if it's like got like if you get a mocha latte or something that's a little different because it's got like syrup or something in it. Although I don't prefer flavored lattes at this point. But that was different. But I've never liked coffee beans or like ground coffee that had a mocha flavor to it. It just like felt too overpowering and I just really didn't like it. But because this is supposed to have like, you know, chocolate marshmallow and kind of a graham cracker flavor, I felt like the chocolate element was more mellowed and I liked it a lot. I really want to try some other flavors from them. Surprisingly, I thought Highland Grog would be my favorite flavor and the S'more Time was my favorite. And I was not expecting that at all. The whole reason I bought the S'more Time one is because there's Bigfoot on the front. My husband loves Bigfoot. So that's the whole reason why I bought that one. And I thought that he would really enjoy the flavor as well. And he did. I think he liked the Highland Grog one just a tiny bit more though. So we want to try more of their flavors. The Cinnabon one looks incredible. Bones Coffee Company is so good. We got the whole bean coffee because we do have a coffee grinder and we prefer to grind our coffee fresh for each pot that we make. So they do also sell it pre-ground though. So I would assume that that is just as delicious. Okay, we're gonna move on to makeup, and I'm not a huge makeup person, as I have mentioned before, and as you probably see in most of my videos, I'm not wearing much makeup. Like today, I'm wearing just a little bit more than normal because I went to church, so when I film on church days, I usually have mascara on and maybe like some lip gloss or something. I bought this, and is it NYX or NYX? I don't know how you say it. Can you even see? I'm such a bad thing of like holding up this stuff and making sure it focuses. This is called Shine Loud. Can you even see it? We'll try. I don't know. Shine Loud. So I really like this because we've got one end that has like the color and then the other end has this lip gloss. So basically you put the lip color on and I leave it on and let it dry entirely before I put the lip gloss on. And then when you put the lip gloss on, it moisturizes it because my biggest problem with like matte lipsticks and stuff is that it just like totally will dry out my lips and you can see all like the lines where like the lip color like gathers as it's drying and it looks really gross. So this is one of those long lasting lipsticks that I think is supposed to last like 24 hours or something like that. It will last me all day, even including eating, and it won't look dried out or gross because the lip gloss kind of like seals it in and moisturizes it, and then the color will just stay. So this is the first one I found that I actually like really like the matte lipstick and it doesn't look nasty within an hour or two. Let's move on to entertainment. So I have been playing some video games as per the norm for me. I kind of divide my entertainment time between video games and reading, and my daughter likes to sit with me while I play video games, and so it's a bonding thing for us and we love playing stuff together. So I have a couple video games that I want to talk about. One of them is kind of like on the lower end because it's a little glitchy, but it's still just so much fun, and that's Disney Dreamlight Valley. We do play it for the Switch. I've heard that it's not glitchy on other systems, especially the PC, but it's kind of very glitchy on the Switch at times, but it's so fun. So this reminds me of Animal Crossing in that there's like all kinds of like sim stuff that you do. You can decorate your house, you can do all these things, you can cook food, you can grow things, you can go fishing, and there's all kinds of that kind of stuff that reminds me of Animal Crossing. And you have like neighbors, but the thing is your neighbors are Disney characters. This was so nostalgic for me to play this, and you're trying to get different Disney characters to come live in your valley and help restore it back to normal because something's happened where you're forgetting things, and like you used to live here but you don't remember it, and people who live in the valley don't remember things. So you do all kinds of side quests and stuff for them too. So it feels story-wise way more involved than Animal Crossing, because Animal Crossing doesn't really have a storyline. Super fun though, and worth the bugs in my opinion. It's just a little glitchy where sometimes the audio or visuals will glitch a little bit. I haven't had anything major happen. The next game that I want to talk about is Child of Light, which is an older game. This is like an RPG platforming game. So you are doing like platforming elements as you're like jumping around and trying to find certain things, and you are playing this girl. The girl's father is dying and the stepmother is bad news. And so something happens where you get sent, I don't know if it's like through a mirror or something like that, to this other world, and you find these other people who join your team, and you're trying to overthrow this like queen of darkness that's like taking over the land and stuff. And I really liked it. And then all the battles are RPG like turn style, and you can like level up and you get stronger and stuff. So I like that element too. But it was just really fun, and the characters talk and rhyme the whole time, and some of them are apparently incapable of rhyming, which is really funny. But I just thought it was a really beautiful video game, and also I highly recommend the soundtrack for it as well. It's one of those ones where I have saved several of the songs from the soundtrack for like reading playlists because they're just so beautiful. Some of them are a little intense for reading playlists because like some of the battling stuff, but it is absolutely such a beautiful game visually and auditory as well, and I really liked it. It's a shorter game. I got it on sale when it was on like the Switch eShop, so I didn't pay very much for it, but I think it's like 10 hours or something like that, so not a lot of gameplay, but if you can get it on sale, totally worth it. And the last game I want to talk about is probably going to be my game of the year. I might do like a ranking video of all the video games I played this year, because that would be fun for me. I don't know if any of you would care, but it'd be fun for me. Anyways, so Tears of the Kingdom, the newest Zelda game. What a shock, right? I loved Breath of the Wild. When Claire first got her Switch last summer, we borrowed Breath of the Wild from my brother-in-law, and then Claire ended up getting her own copy for Christmas. And Tears of the Kingdom came out in May. This is like a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild. And so it takes place very shortly after the ending of Breath of the Wild. And I think that this is Breath of the Wild 2.0 because you have a lot of the same characters, you have the same world, like you have the same overall like map that you have from Breath of the Wild, but your abilities are different, and I think that they're better. I don't really want to be spoilery because it hasn't been out for that long, so there's probably a lot of people that maybe have not played it just yet, so I don't want to be spoilery with it. But I just think that the abilities are better. I think the exploration is better. They have improved on things that were not the best in Breath of the Wild, even though I loved Breath of the Wild, and that was for sure my favorite game that I played last year. But still, there were things that are annoying, like, you know, when you're trying to climb in the rain. If you know, you know. They have done things to improve that, to help you with those kinds of things, which is really cool. And despite having like the same like map of Hyrule, they have added things to it that increases the areas that you can explore in terms of like the sky and below the surface. That is really, really cool. The dungeons or temples or whatever, they feel more like traditional Zelda dungeons with a little bit, I guess, of some of the stuff of Breath of the Wild, but that was a complaint lots of people had about Breath of the Wild, is they were not traditional dungeons and stuff, so the puzzle solving wasn't the greatest, and I think that this one is really, really good. And I love the storyline. I didn't feel like Breath of the Wild had much of a storyline, but Claire and I were so invested in the storyline of Tears of the Kingdom, and we love it. Actually, all right, to be spoilery, I just finished this and it's July, so technically I didn't finish it in the second quarter. I finished it in the third, but I played it for like 2.5 months before I finished it, and I did not 100% complete it. So yeah, don't be impressed by that because I did not 100% it, not even close. But the final fight was so fun and so good, and the storyline was so good that Claire and I got pretty emotional at the end of it. It was so good. All right, so moving on to music. There's not too much new on the music front for me. We're still enjoying K-pop a lot in our house. The majority of what we listen to is classical music, K-pop, and worship music. And that's pretty much all we listen to. Which is fine. Not too much new on the K-pop front. Girl groups have really been coming through for us lately. We are really, really enjoying ITZY. That's the newer band for us that we have found. We really like, they have just a very good like girl power message kind of a thing, because they're pretty young. They're a young group, and their message, most of their songs is like, just be yourself. Don't try to be like other people. Be yourself. Don't want to be other people. Be yourself. And I like that a lot. So I think that that's a good message, especially for my daughter, who's almost 11, that, you know, she's getting to the age where people, you know, that awkward age, you know, of like junior high and then high school where it's like you're trying to fit in and stuff, and it's like, no, march to the beat of your own drum. And I just think that that's a great message for her to have at this age. Lastly, we really enjoyed Jisoo from Blackpink. Actually had her own like little solo thing that she did, only had a couple of songs on it, but we love the music video for Flower, but All Eyes on Me I think is an even more fun song. So that's kind of what we've been listening to. And then TV shows, still going strong with K-dramas. There are 2 K-dramas that I have finished in the second quarter, one of which I watched with my friend Joanna, and that's While You Were Sleeping. This is such a fun premise for a TV show. So there's this girl and she has these dreams, and the dreams that she has, she wakes up, she writes them down because they come true. And so at the very first episode, she dreams something about this guy, and she dreams that he is going to like try to light his cigarette at a gas station, and his car is going to like explode and cause a fire, and he's gonna die. And so she ends up seeing him somewhere, and she's trying to stop him. And there's this whole thing of like, can you really change the future? And when you change the future, how does that then affect the trajectory? Because there's only so much you can change. It's such an interesting premise for a show, and I thought it was really, really fun. I was super invested in like the main romance. I just think they're adorable together, and the main character is Bae Suzy, and she was the main girl in Startup, and I love her. I think she's just amazing. I also finished Itaewon Class with my husband, and this is like a new favorite one for me. I don't know that I'd recommend it to everyone because it is kind of intense at times, especially with some of the violence like towards the very beginning of the show and then again at the very end of the show. But the premise is that there is this young man and his father ends up dying, and he kind of wants to take revenge on the people who are responsible for that. And so it is a revenge story, but it's also a story about like loving people around you. And he has this dream to open this restaurant because that's what he and his dad were doing before his dad passed away, and he has a dream to do that. But he really treats his employees like real people and like family. And so there's so much found family elements, and there's just, oh my gosh, I was just very emotionally invested, like so attached to the main character, and I just really loved him. And it ended up having some really good messaging throughout as well, and I really, really loved it. Okay, the main attraction, why you're probably here, is for books, because this is booktube, right? So let's talk about my favorite books. I have my top 5 books for the second quarter, which is a little bit of a lie because I'm kind of including an entire series for one of these books, although maybe I shouldn't, because I think every time I've done quarterly favorites, I've included a book from this trilogy, and I did just complete the trilogy. Technically, I completed it like the very, very, very beginning of July, but like July 2nd or something. So I'm just counting it for last quarter. That's the Farseer trilogy. So I did just complete Assassin's Quest, which is the 3rd one. I don't really want to talk too much about subsequent books here, but the initial premise of this series is that there is a young boy named Fitz, and he is the illegitimate child of the prince who is actually in line to be king. And when he is, I don't know, like 5 or 6, his mother and grandfather are like, we're not feeding this kid anymore. His dad can take care of him, and he gets dropped off at this keep and castle so that way, you know, the royal family can take care of him. And so he is being raised there, but not raised as actually royalty because he is illegitimate, so he can't come into the throne or anything like that. He's very much looked down on by a lot of people in court, but the king likes him and ends up having him be trained as an assassin. So the first book is Assassin's Apprentice, then we have Royal Assassin, and then Assassin's Quest. And this entire trilogy, not only is the writing just phenomenal, just so good, my favorite fantasy writing ever, and maybe one of my favorite authors forever, for like everything, because I love her writing so much. But in addition, we just have like a really interesting magic system, and we have very interesting plots as well, although parts of the books are slow moving. In Assassin's Quest, I think, is the most slow moving, but some people might say that Assassin's Apprentice is pretty slow moving as well, just because, you know, we're being introduced to the world and kind of watching Fitz grow up through the first book. But the thing that I love the most is the characters. Like, I got so attached to people and not people, because some of the characters are not people. And I just, my gosh, I just love them so much. I'm so invested in this world, and I'm really happy that this is not the end, even though it's the end of a trilogy. I think it's like a 16 book series overall. I do want to go on to read more, especially of Fitz's story, because I know the next trilogy is not Fitz's story, but it does fit in with the world. But I really want to spend more time in Fitz's world with Fitz and the Fool and Night Eyes and other people, but The Fool and Night Eyes are my favorites. Another fictional book that I have on here that I would say is a favorite of the quarter is Trust of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. This is not my favorite Brandon Sanderson of all time, but it's still a 5-star book, and it's still so wonderful. I just like, this is one of those books that I feel like I read the right book at the right time, and that made a huge difference for me, for real. Like, it was so good, and I'm so happy that I read it when I did. I read it like right in the midst of having a really busy season of life and kind of a lot of stressful things that was happening. And the thing that was so incredible about it is it just kind of like took me out of that, and it's so lighthearted and lyrically written, and there's so much humor in it, more so than other Brandon Sanderson books, because it is written from the perspective of a character that plays a prominent role in the Stormlight Archive, and it's narrated from his perspective, so that it has a lot of humor to it. So there'll be moments where I was laughing out loud, and then the next moment that narrator would say something kind of insightful, and I'm like, oh, that's so good. And so it was just really the perfect time. I don't think that the plot of it itself really wowed me, but Sanderson basically wrote this for his wife, who really loved The Princess Bride, and she said to him, like, what would have happened if Buttercup had gone after Wesley instead of just giving him up for dead? What if she had gone to try to rescue him? And that's kind of how Tress of the Emerald Sea was born, because Tress is just this normal girl, and she falls in love with this boy who ends up getting in danger and being kind of like shipped away, and she's like, I'm gonna go find him. And it's so good. I think the magic system was cool, the world was cool, and I just loved it so much. Again, not my favorite Sanderson ever. I saw the ending coming a mile away. It was really easy for me to figure out what was going on, and that doesn't often happen to me with Sanderson books. Usually I'm kind of wowed, and I wasn't in that sense, but it was just such a comforting and wonderful read. The next 2 books I want to talk about are both nonfictions, and they are both books that I think are going to be favorites of the year for sure. And the first one of those is Breaking Bread by the Dead by Ellen Jacobs. And this is a book about why it is so important to read classics, and how reading classics expands your horizons in that you connect to the past, you understand the past, and also it makes you more grounded in the present and for decision making as a whole in the future. Helps you kind of understand history and human nature and kind of trends. You know, sometimes you see things and you're like, oh my gosh, people are behaving this way, and the country is like this, and like, oh my gosh. And it's really interesting how when you read classics and you kind of connect with the historical context at the time that these classics were written, that you kind of realize there's nothing new under the sun, and we just kind of cycle through the same kind of things because human nature stays the same. That's not the only reason why you should read classics though, and I don't think that's even the primary reason that he gives. He gives a lot of different reasons as to why it's so important. So this is a book that if you read classics, you will be like, yes, this is wonderful. This is a book that if you're like, why do I need to read classics? This book is wonderful, because I think that it lays out a lot of reasons of how it's really helpful for you. And then also, if you read classics but you have a really difficult time with some of the content in it, because there are things in classics that are upsetting. You know, there's a lot of misogyny, there's a lot of racism, there's a lot of ableism, and a lot of viewpoints that we have kind of grown as a society past some of these things that were normal or even celebrated back in the times when these classics were written, you know, 100, 200, whatever, how many years ago. And I think that this book does a good job of kind of explaining why things are that way and how to reconcile that without excusing it. The other nonfiction that I read that I just love, The Knowledge of the Holy by A.W. Tozer. You've heard me talk about this a lot recently because I co-hosted a read-along of this with Krista from Books and Jams and Dia from Novel Idea, and it was so special. We got together once a week and chatted about it with you guys live, so it was so wonderful to have all of you joined us who did, and we just really loved it. We basically just kind of had a schedule that we read so many chapters. It was 1 chapter a day actually, because it was pretty short. It was only 23 chapters. And then we just got together on Saturdays and chatted about it, and it was phenomenal. And I am so glad that I read it, but also so glad I read it in a group setting, because that just made it way more special. This is my second Tozer, and it will not be my last. This particular one is about the attributes of God. So it's about learning about who God is, not who we think God is, not who we want God to be, but who God reveals himself to be through scripture, through nature, all of those kinds of things. And it's so good. And the last book that I want to talk about that was a favorite of the quarter and will likely also be a favorite of the year is Labyrinths by Borges. And every time I talk about this book, I am shocked that this is making a favorites list. I mentioned this in my quarter-year crisis, my mid-year freakout tag, and wrap-ups that I've talked about this book, and when I was vlogging talking about this book. I've talked about this book a lot, and you're probably tired of hearing about this book too, so I'm sorry. But this book is just, it's crazy. It's so thought-provoking. It's so good. It is a book that I really recommend to people when you have the mental capacity to be able to think about it. I think that if I had tried to read this book when I was super stressed out or really, really overwhelmed or crazy things happening in my life, I don't think I would have had the mental space to dedicate to this book in the way that it deserves and demands of you. This is not a book that you can just read through and you're entertained. This is a book that explores philosophy, religion, the concept of time, like all these kinds of things. And he doesn't give you this like narrative story and then here's your moral of the story, here you go, this is what I'm saying. It requires you to think and come to your own conclusions, which is something that I really loved about it. And it really tied in super well with knowledge of the holy, which is another just weird thing. Like I never would have thought Tozer and Borges together. This is my first Borges, which I don't know how many books he has out, but this collection is a collection of short stories, essays, and parables, which are essentially even shorter short stories. They're like a page long. I talked about which ones were my favorites when I did my wrap up for June. So I'll link that in case you want to know which ones were my favorites. I don't feel the need to rehash that right now, and I don't even have the book sitting right here, so I'm not going to do that. But suffice it to say, this is an incredible book. It will make you think. It will make your brain hurt. There will be times that you don't even understand what he's trying to say and you just need to move on. But, you know, overall, it was such an incredible, incredible experience and I loved it. Those are my favorites from the quarter. These are things that made me so happy and brought me a lot of joy, made me think, made me happy, brought community in various ways, and I loved it. So please tell me in the comments what have been some of your favorite things over the quarter. Could be books, could be food, could be entertainment. What is it in your life right now that is bringing you joy, that just made the past couple of months more wonderful and enriched it? Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.